Welcome to our Sky Island Alliance coffee break. Thank you all for joining today. Today we're going to learn about some of the work that Sky Island Alliance has been up to in the Santa Catalina Mountains. As you all are joining, please feel free to share some of your favorite spots in the Catalinas. I really, since I was a child, have always loved the Molino Basin area personally. For those of you that have been to the Catalinas, where are your favorite spots? Go ahead and drop that into the chat. As folks are joining the audio and typing their favorite Catalina spots, for those of you that I haven't met before, my name is Sarah Truby, and I'm the Habitat Conservation Manager here with Sky Island Alliance. Today, I am joining you from Tucson, Arizona, where the Sky Island Alliance office sits on the lands of the Tohono O'odham, Pasquayaqui, and other indigenous peoples. If you'd like to learn more about these lands, my colleague Rick is pasting a link in the chat to learn more. Oh, I see Danny just popped up in the chat, discovered the Sunset Trail. Absolutely, yeah, and the trail into Summerhaven. Really, really beautiful. For those of you that haven't spent time in the Catalinas, for sure, take the chance to get up there. And we're going to share with you one project where you can participate up in the Catalinas. So today I am joined by my colleague, Stewardship Manager, Bryon Lichtenhan. Bryon has been with Sky Island Alliance for 10 years now and has been leading volunteer conservation and restoration trips throughout this time. Today, Bryon will discuss Project Mountain Recharge, which is how we are trying to mitigate fire damage in the Catalinas and how you can get involved. As a reminder, we're going to have everyone stay muted during the talk, but please feel free to type questions into the chat and we'll get to all of those at the end. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Bryon. Take it away.
All right, thank you so much. And I just want to double check that folks can see my slideshow. Is that working for everybody?
Yes.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, and thank you everybody for joining us today. I'm really excited to talk about what we've been doing and what we are getting ready to do up in the Catalina Mountains. So yeah, I would like to start off with just a brief mention about who we are as an organization, if there are folks who are new here. For 35 years or so, Sky Island Alliance has been working to protect and restore the diversity of the Sky Island region in the US and Mexico. We envision the Sky Islands as a place where nature thrives, where open space and clean water are available to all, and where people are connected to the region and its innate ability to enrich our lives. And that's something in particular that I work very hard on at Sky Island Alliance, getting people out into the field and connected to the land, and helping nature to thrive. And we also use science, conservation, education, and advocacy to connect this landscape, the people, and the wildlife of the Sky Islands for the benefit of all. And if for some reason you are unfamiliar with the term the Sky Islands, this map here shows the region, most of the region anyway. Basically, it's this this archipelago basically of mountain ranges that act as islands of ecosystem islands basically above these desert and grassland seas in between, and they kind of bridge the gap between the Sierra Madre of Mexico and the Rocky Mountain chain of the US and Canada. All right, Project Mountain Recharge is our effort to mitigate some of the damage done by fires in the Catalinas in particular, although we have been doing this work in other ranges as well, and will continue to do this work in other ranges as well. And this work doesn't necessarily have to be done in areas where there have been fires. It can be done anywhere, but it's particularly important after a fire to do this work. So yeah, we're up in the mountains moving rocks to save the rain on Mount Lemmon. And talking about fire, why do we have to do this, and why are we doing this in the Santa Catalinas? Well, this is why. I'm sure many of you remember and were around for the Bighorn Fire in 2020. And that fire was started by a lightning strike near Push Ridge, on kind of the southwestern corner of the mountains, and it ended up burning nearly 120,000 acres of the Santa Catalina Mountains. Most of the mountain range was burnt to some extent or another. This map shows the extent of the fire, and it's basically a heat map. So where you see red means it burned the hottest. Where you see blues and greens, it burned the coolest. So or didn't burn in some of those green areas. So basically, in 2023, Skyland Alliance got the opportunity to work with the forest to start mitigating some of the damage caused by fire up there, and we are doing that by building erosion control structures. Obviously, with so much of the mountain range burnt and really a limited ability on our part to work everywhere all at once, we had to focus our efforts. And we decided to do that by focusing our efforts around springs, particularly springs in areas that had burnt hotter relative to other areas of the fire. So why focus on springs? Well, first of all, springs act as a refugia during fires. Basically, springs, because they are wetter and moister, tend to burn less hot or even not burn during a fire. That means that plants and animals can survive there that might not be able to survive in areas around the spring that burn hotter. And you can see in this image above, this is actually looking out over a spring on kind of the east flank of the Santa Catalinas. You can see the landscape around this spring burnt badly, and even though the spring itself also burnt, you can see the mature trees within this site burnt. You can also see how green it is right around that site, because that's where everything is coming back after the fire. So roots were able to survive in some of those other areas around that spring. The fire burnt so hot that even the roots died back. But here the spring again is able to bounce back and survive the fire better than the surrounding areas. But yeah, springs are also relied upon, obviously, by many plants and animals throughout the year and throughout time. But springs are also at risk after a fire. Many of our springs in this region, most of our springs in this region, are either riocrine springs, meaning they emerge within a drainage, or they're hill slope springs, meaning they're emerging on the side of a hill. And in both those cases, when a fire has burnt through an area, burnt off the vegetation, and exposed a lot of soil, you can get erosion that will then wash down and cover the spring, whether that's on a hill or within a drainage. So springs are at risk, and springs, are so important to all of life. So they can also be dewatered after a fire, because the rainfall that might normally support the spring throughout the year tends to run rapidly off the watershed after spring. And so that can fail to recharge the aquifer that spring is tapped into. So basically, for these reasons, prioritizing springs allows our limited resources to yield compounding results. We get to decrease erosion, we get to protect the existing waters, we get to increase water availability for the future. Now, how do these structures we're building do that? So the main thing, one of the first things they do is they slow the flow of water across the landscape, and that allows water more time to infiltrate into the soils. You can halt certain types of erosion entirely with these structures. If you've got a head cut, which we'll talk about later, you can stop that head cut from moving up a drainage. These structures also collect soil and seed within them and behind the structure. Again, this helps slow down the water. If you've got a series of these structures in a system, they kind of create a tiering or terracing effect, which slows the water down. And as that seed is collected and that soil is collected, they really help plants to get established. And plants are ultimately the best line of defense when it comes to erosion. The roots of plants do better work than the rocks or logs ever can. But they support those plants not only by catching those seed, but also by maintaining that soil moisture within and around that structure. And they last indefinitely, especially rock structures last as long as rocks last, which is effectively forever as far as our time scale is concerned. And even log structures or other types of structures last a very long time. When they're embedded in the ground, they tend to degrade much more slowly. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about like the structures that we use, how they work. And so we'll start by talking about one rock dams. These structures are probably our best and first line of defense in this erosion work. They can be put all throughout drainages. They're really low profile, so they tend not to get washed out or blown out the way some other higher profile structures can. And yeah, they're kind of a great do-it-all thing. We build these structures basically in any kind of straightaway within a structure. Any place we want to either hold the drainage's shape, or we want to slowly increase sedimentation within a drainage. They're also paired well with other structures, and basically the one rock dam is a bit of a misnomer. As you can see, they are not built with only one rock, and because of their low profile, they really don't act as much of a dam either. But one rock dam just comes from the fact that we're only using one layer of rock. Other structures we use are media lunas and rock lines. These are really great at spreading flow across a hillside or potentially collecting flow where needed. Rock lines are great when you've got a hillside that's become very barren. You can see in this photograph, this hillside burnt very hot, basically burnt down to mineral soil in a lot of places, and there wasn't much to hold this hillside together. This is a hillside overlooking a spring site, so we really wanted to hold back those soils and keep them from flowing down and covering over that spring if we could. So these were great. These are built on the contour line, so they're really fun to build. You get to use weird levels and things. And if you're interested, you should join us on a trip and get to learn how to make level out in the wilderness. Yeah, another structure we use a lot are rock rundowns. These are used again where you've got a head cut. So a head cut again is a nick basically in a drainage where you've got active erosion. You're seeing a steep drop off in the channel. The picture to the side here is showing like a cross section across the length of a drainage, showing that drop where water is pouring over, and as it pours over, it cuts away at that soil, and the head cut migrates upstream. So if that head cut is shallow enough, you can do a rock mulch rundown, lay back the head cut, basically armor that with rock, and that will help stop that erosion. In cases where you have a deeper head cut or more energy in a system, a rock rundown isn't going to quite cut it. And so in that case, we build what are called Zuni bowls. This term comes from the Zuni Pueblo, where a lot of these structures have been built traditionally to help arrest erosion. And as you can see from these images, you basically create a bowl out of that head cut, and you line it with rock, and you build it so that water pours over into the bowl but then has to climb back out. That ensures that you get pooling, and as water then pours into that pool, it loses a lot of its energy. And yeah, you can see one of our volunteers and board members over here to the side modeling our modeling one of these Zuni bowls. Zuni bowls, unfortunately, are one of the hardest rock structures to get good pictures of because they just look like a pile of rocks and you can't tell that there's actually a bowl there, but so it goes. So rocks aren't the only thing that we can and do use for these structures or to arrest erosion. Obviously, we got a lot of other options. There are straw wattles. There are log mats that can be used similar to a one rock dam. You can build log rundowns or log falls in places where you don't have a lot of rock, but you have a lot of wood. You can use that to arrest a head cut. And obviously straw bales can also be used basically as dams and erosion control. And as this work continues in the Catalinas, we have a lot of opportunity to use wood, and so we might be seeing more of these structures getting put in place in coming years. So where are we so far? Like I said, we've been at work since 2023, and in that time, we've built 309 erosion control structures across the range. You can see up in the corner that kind of map picture with the red and yellowy orange blocks on it is showing an area around Maverick Spring where we did a lot of work. And I'm showing you that now because we're going to look at another map later to kind of get a feeling for the extent of where we worked so far. You have to really zoom in to be able to see the detail of what all these structures are and where we've built them. As we zoom out, we lose a lot of that. We just kind of see general areas where we've worked. But yeah, so we've built a lot of structures so far. 65 different people have joined us in the effort. And collectively, they've donated 1,300 hours of their time to this project. And we're really grateful for that. Our work could not be done without our volunteers. So this is again some of the upper reaches, higher elevations of the mountains. You can see Summerhaven in the kind of whitish gray area up in the top left. And again, this is that same heat map zoomed in. You can see where the red and yellowy orange areas burnt the hottest. And then the areas with green burnt the coolest. This is kind of an overview of where we've been working. And again, we can't do it all. We're a small organization. We're always trying to build our capacity and excited about more opportunities to do more. But all of these sites are really around springs. These are supporting those waters that we already have at those high elevations and protecting them from erosion while we continue to find more places we can do this work effectively. All right, so what's next? So far, we've been working with the Forest Service very closely. Our funding has been coming from the Forest Service, and that's been really great. Like I said, we've been able to do a lot of work. We're focusing that effort around springs. But we've been looking for chances to work higher in the watershed, work in areas that are supporting the communities in the mountain and downstream. And we recently were able to get funding from the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority of Arizona, supporting the building of 150 more erosion control structures on private and public lands in the Catalinas in the next year. So the chance to work on private lands is really nice because Summerhaven is right at the top of the Sabino Canyon watershed. And a lot of the drainages up there are on private land, that land that's owned by the HOAs at the top or individual cabin owners. And so by partnering with the Water Finance Infrastructure Authority or Water Infrastructure Finance Authority, we've got a chance to work in those upper drainages and support the flows through town, through Marshall Gulch, and ultimately down into down into Sabino Canyon. So yeah, a great chance for us. And it's also going to allow us to continue work on the Forest Service lands around the community. So how can you help? Well, the first step to all of this is figuring out where erosion is occurring. And we've set up an app, much like our spring seeking app, if you're familiar with that. This is a survey on Survey 123 that allows us to prioritize where we need to be working on the mountains. The best way to help out with this is to download the Survey 123 app onto your phone or tablet, and then you can go to our website and search Project Mountain Recharge, or follow this QR code. Folks, this video will be posted on our website, and so if you're not able to follow this QR code now, obviously later you'll be given a link to this presentation. You can follow the QR code then, or like I said, search Project Mountain Recharge on our website. It'll take you to a blog post where we're talking about this work, and there is a link there where you can download this survey once you have downloaded the app. So when using this app in the field, you'll be asked the type of erosion feature, you'll be asked the impacts the erosion is having on infrastructure or plants or water resources like springs nearby. And you'll be asked questions like if there are other restoration concerns, such as proximity to a spring or cattle impacts or invasive species, things like that. This app can be, when you've downloaded it on your phone, you can use this offline, which is important, obviously. Much of the mountain range here and across the region, you can't, you're not going to be getting service. So that's important. And I want to clarify too that this app can be used to document erosion throughout our region. Right now, this current effort is focused in the Catalinas, but we are always looking for and jumping on opportunities to do work like this throughout the region. So anywhere we know there's erosion, it gives us a chance to potentially work there. Also, this app is pretty new, and we're always open for suggestions. If in your use of it, you're thinking there should be some different questions or whatever, feel free to reach out and let us know. So other ways to help. Keep an eye on our calendar on our website. We have volunteer events popping up all the time. I expect another erosion control event to be showing up shortly, although it's not currently posted. Another great way to help out is to join Spring Seeker. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that program, but this is our community science project to document springs throughout the region. That data that we get from that helps us again to determine good spots for restoration projects. And so it's super helpful. And again, if you're doing spring seeking in the Santa Catalinas, that can very directly lead to our doing work around those springs. There are questions in Spring Seeker about fire damage and erosion and things like that. But again, great to use throughout the region. If you are so moved, you can also make a donation to the Mount Lemmon Conservation Fund to help protect springs, habitat, and groundwater in the Santa Catalina Mountains. And that again, you can find a link to on that same blog about the Project Mountain Recharge on our website. And I want to thank our partners so far in this work. So obviously we're working very closely with the Forest Service. Like I said, they've been responsible for providing the funding that's allowed this work to begin and these so far 300 plus structures to be built. We've been working with Arizona Conservation Corps. They've been providing crews that have helped us, especially in the first couple of years, to get some of this work done in those spots that are a little harder to reach with volunteers. Hard to expect folks to put in 10-hour days and hike many miles a day carrying tools for this effort. So we really appreciate their help. And then again, the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority of Arizona has been instrumental in helping this project move forward. And donors and volunteers like you, of course. We have not been able to do any of this work without your help, and we really appreciate it. So with that, I'd like to open it up for questions, if we've had any. And if not, please feel free to throw them in the chat now, and I'll be happy to do what I can to answer them.
Awesome. Thank you, Bryon. Yeah, I have to say when I joined Scott Island about 4 years ago and started building these structures, there was a little piece of me that was like, these can't do anything. And then going back and revisiting them, structures that we've built a year ago or even a season ago, to really see that they're already adding sediment behind them, and you can already see the impact, and they're growing plants, and it's really, really remarkable to see the impact of these small structures on large scale questions of water infiltration and vegetation recovery and all that. As Bryon said, please feel free to put questions into the chat. I do have a couple of questions myself. So I was out, not in the Catalinas, but elsewhere in the region on Monday, and there were a number of different erosion issues there. And I was wondering if you could comment on how big is too big to report with the app and how small is too small to report with the app.
How big is too big and how small is too small? I honestly feel like people should and can report anything on the app. We do have like a question that gets into kind of how big is the area. So if it's real, so if an area is really big and there's a lot of different erosion points throughout an area, you're seeing head cuts all over and stuff. So there are questions that ask like, I'd have to open it up again, but that basically ask, where's the head cut? Are there more head cuts within 10 feet of there? If there are more head cuts present within 10 feet, we ask, how many there are. If it's greater than 10 feet away, feel free to make another point, and if the most you can do, if you don't have time to like document every single point in an area that's rather big, then make a single point, and there are options as you fill this out for notes and things like that. Put in the notes, this area was too big for me to survey effectively, or there were so many points, like I didn't have the time. That gives us a great clue that that's a spot that we should go check out and visit. And then as far as things being too small, or what would be too small? I'd say like if you're noticing erosion that I don't know. If you have a question on whether it's too small, just document it.
Yeah, that's, I guess,
Yeah, I
I
feel
guess
like
that is
that's,
similar.
I
Yeah,
mean, I
yeah.
think realistically there are some things that are probably smaller than we would put effort into fixing right now, but document it. You know, if you don't know, document it. And that's going to be the best solution.
I like it. So it's kind of like Spring Secrets, like you're the one standing there. Whatever your best judgment is probably correct. If you think it's worth documenting, put it in the app.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Very cool. I have another question. I haven't seen anything pop up in the chat yet, but please feel free to type your questions if you have something. I'm wondering if you can comment a little bit on how erosion control structures fare in flash floods, like some of those really, really big floods that we get here during monsoon season in particular.
Yeah. Well, it all depends on the type of structure and the energy in a system, obviously. One of the big things we're doing right now is we're working at the top of these watersheds. And a good reason to do that is because there's less energy in the system at that point. So when you're working towards the top, things are going to last longer and be less likely to wash out. Of course, you can build things lower in the watershed and in areas with a lot more energy, but it does require different strategies and different types of structures than what we're building right now. So that said, the structures we are building tend to be low profile. They tend not to create a big like dam for the water, and so that pressure behind them tends not to build up so bad. They tend to last pretty well in the floods that they're built to withstand, and they fill in really fast. I mean, if we really get like flash flooding in an area, as you said, Sarah, you know, it's fun to see those structures refill or get filled up with sediments. That can literally happen in one storm if enough sediments are mobilized. So that said, we can always go back and build more structures when those sediments fill in behind a structure. But even if we don't, they are still holding the moisture, the extra moisture that they are. If they built up sediment behind, that's creating a flatter, broader area that can soak in, or where moisture can soak in and hold. And so yeah. That said, you can also build structures that purposefully cause erosion during a flash flood. Sometimes you've got a channel that's become so narrow you actually need to widen it out. And so some structures, if you got a flash flood, would be driving water into the banks and pushing those banks out wider so that ultimately water slows down within that wider channel. Yeah, yes.
Awesome.
And so I also wanted to mention, and I forgot to say this as in terms of ways you can help out, but if you're not comfortable using the app or you don't have a smartphone or things like that, but you know there are areas with erosion in the Catalinas, just reach out to us. Reach out to me directly, shoot me an email, and I'll be happy to like add it to the list of places I'm checking out. And if you have a cabin up on the mountain with issues around it, please let me know. I've got a long list of places that I'm trying to visit up there, and I'm doing a lot of work, but I will get to you eventually. And yeah, for those of you who are waiting on that contact, I'm sorry it's taken me so long, but I'm working my way through the list.
Awesome. Well, actually, speaking of, I think Rick will probably post your email into the chat so that people can contact you directly. We do have a couple of other questions. So I think you mentioned this, but it'd be good to review one more time. Interested in erosion in the Santa Catalinas or interested throughout the Sky Island region?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we are definitely interested throughout the region. So right now, this project is specifically going on in the Santa Catalinas in response to the Bighorn Fire, but obviously there have been fires in all of our mountain ranges at one time or another, some more recently than others. there's erosion going on throughout the region, even not in the mountains. And so that erosion mapper survey really can and should be used anywhere. We're always coming across different funding opportunities that might be a great fit for erosion in another mountain range or even on private lands or at lower elevation. So it can be used anywhere. That said, right now we're definitely focusing our efforts in the Catalinas. So if you have an opportunity to map erosion up there, we really appreciate it. But if your travels take you elsewhere, then by all means, map it where you find it.
Awesome. Another question came up about partnering with other organizations, particularly climbers, like rock climbers who have built erosion control structures in the Santa Catalinas, including some planned upcoming work days. And they're just curious as to whether or not collaboration is something that we're interested in. Yes, but Bryon
Yeah,
can.
we're always interested in collaboration opportunities for sure. All of our work is a collaboration with folks, and we're always happy to share information, to share our maps. If you've got that survey, you can see where erosion mapping has occurred. And if you've got, yeah, I mean, that's public information. So
Yeah.
feel free to reach out if you've got an interest in collaborating. If you know of other organizations that are doing this work that you think we should be in touch with, please feel free to send me info.
Yeah,
And
and yeah, I also think that a lot of folks probably I've seen a lot of like climber erosion control structures that are designed to maintain trails to climbing areas, and I think
Mhm.
that wherever the erosion issue is, even though we mostly focus on in channel and slope erosion, if there's trail-based erosion too, like I think we'd be interested in that as well. But Bryon,
Yeah,
on that.
yeah, I will say, generally speaking, there are other organizations that focus on trails and trail work, and so we've kind of seen our piece of the puzzle to work in those more remote areas, and again, areas especially supporting springs and other water sources. That feels like something that nobody else is doing. So that's where we've been focusing our effort. But again, erosion on trails, if uh, mapping that, making us aware of that is great. We can always share that information with other organizations who work on trails who might be interested in tackling those issues. And it might be something that we do too. Some of our work in the early days, we were walking trails that had not really been maintained since the Bighorn Fire on our way to springs, and we did work along those trails in order to get there safely and to not be increasing the erosion along those trails. So again, basically any erosion anywhere, document it. And if it's not us addressing it, we'll try and help
Yeah.
those organizations that are.
Cool. We have a couple of questions actually about the erosion control structures themselves and the process of building that and kind of what goes into that before and after.
Mhm.
One of the questions is, do you change the size of rocks used in an erosion control structure depending on the area, say baseball size to watermelon size, or just use whatever sizes are locally available?
Well, so yes, you do want to right size the rocks for the structure. As you get more energy in a system, you're going to probably need bigger rocks to to for them not to be washed away by the power of those waters. So you do need to do that to a certain extent. There are certain ways of building structures to mitigate that. If you're forced to work with smaller rocks, there are ways to build the structures such that they support each other better. But generally speaking, the smaller the rocks get, the harder it's going to be for them to stay put. Generally speaking, working at the tops of these watersheds, we're using rocks on the big end that are like a large watermelon sized, maybe even bigger than that, and working down, maybe the majority of the rocks in a structure might be kind of cantaloupe sized, and keeping with our cucurbits, maybe smaller ones would be coyote gourd sized. But yeah.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if you remember that one AZCC crew we worked with where like they realized that they would have to carry fewer rocks if they just carried bigger rocks. So they started collaborating and carrying bigger and bigger rocks. They're like, right, we're done with after 3 rocks, which I actually thought was kind of clever. But but it definitely does. In those drainages, it was okay to have larger rocks to keep them in place. But yeah.
So yeah, so basically, if you're forced to use smaller rocks, you end up building different structures. You may be familiar with gabions, which are wire wrapped structures, or basically you're using kind of like a chain link fencing material and filling it with rocks and embedding that and anchoring that across a drainage. And that's a way to use smaller rocks in drainages with higher energy. And sometimes we're working in areas where there just aren't good local rocks, and in that case we may have to import those, and that might mean having a crew driving off to places with better rocks and collecting them in the bed of a pickup and bringing them back to us, or it may mean like actually getting deliveries of rock from from a rock supplier in order to build in a certain section or a certain place. But as I mentioned, there are other materials that can be used. You can use logs, you can use straw wattles, you can use straw bales, things like that. And we're almost certainly going to be building more of those soon. I know one of the HOAs around Summerhaven is doing a lot of firewise work, meaning they're having to thin trees, and they're excited to use that material to address erosion. So yeah, if you don't have the right sized rocks, you can do things about it. But
Cool.
I hope that answers the question.
I think Nick, you're just gonna have to come out with us and see what size rocks we use in various areas for a detailed answer to that. But yeah, Eric also clarified that most of the work climbers are doing is not on trails, some is on paths, so non-system trails, and then much of the base of cliffs and a few directly alongside riparian areas and springs, which actually I wonder might be the erosion control work that we saw built at one of the springs that nobody at the Forest Service was sure who had done it. So yeah, Eric, I would be very interested in talking to you about that to find out where that work is being done for sure. And we have one more question that popped up in the chat. Is there an effort to survey for sensitive or rare plants in springs and wet areas before erosion control structures are built?
So yeah, so when we do spring seeking, it asks questions about what plants are there, and all of our work too has to be cleared by the Forest Service. So when we decide to do work, at least all our work on the public lands has to be cleared. So yeah, basically we don't do any work that hasn't been cleared by the forest biologists, archaeologists, all that stuff. So yes, if there are species that are going to be impacted by the work, we are made aware of it, or we aren't given permission to work in that area if it's determined that it could be a threat to those species. And as I mentioned, the Spring Seeker app asks questions about that as well, so that's a great way for us to gather that information. And the Erosion Mapper app also asks questions like that about conservation concerns or restoration concerns, including sensitive species. Obviously, we don't expect everyone to know what all those species are. And so, again, the work gets cleared and we end up visiting every site before we work in a site. So we're keeping an eye out for that and keeping that in mind for sure.
Yeah, we also don't like build erosion control structures on top of plants. Usually, like
Right.
it's around, like we like to maintain the plants that are there because they're already doing work with their roots. So yeah, usually these are structures that are built in places that need the sediment retention and yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, As I mentioned, the plants are doing the best job of controlling erosion. And so when we're placing these structures, we're looking for places that aren't heavily vegetated. If an area is heavily vegetated, then we probably don't need to be building structures there at all.
Right,
Um,
right.
so yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I'm not seeing anything else pop up in the chat, but hopefully you all saw Bryan's email that was pasted in there, and I'm sure Bryon would be delighted to answer your questions after the fact. We also are going to be posting this recording on our website, and we'll send it out to you all afterwards, so it's free to share if you want to pass on to any colleagues who might be interested in doing erosion mappers. So feel free to keep an eye on your email. You'll get that email to you. We also have a blog on our website that has some more details about this project. And just in general, like we already said, we have a lot of events coming up, and we're always posting more events. So if you are interested in coming in the field with us and building some of these erosion control structures, keep an eye on that calendar, and we'll make sure that that you get out on a trip with us. So with that, I hope you all will join me in thanking Bryon for the overview of erosion work going on in the Catalinas and how you can all get involved. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.